everybody, and welcome to a Victory Green Hour for the final time in the 2024 regular season as the Philadelphia Eagles defeated the New York Giants 20-13 to finish with a franchise tying record, 14 wins on the year. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, what's up, bud?
Well, it was a week. It was a game. I mean, there was some other good games and stuff. There was some fun stuff to watch, some scenarios breaking down. But I mean, it was the Giants are bad. I can't believe the decision they made today. To be honest, I mean, I love it. I love it for the NFC East, and I hope McCarthy stays in Dallas. Those things go hand in hand as great things for the Eagles. So. We'll see. We'll see how the offseason breaks out. But we're under, like Brett Eclipse says, Packers week again.
It is like week one. We're in Brazil in a de facto Eagles home game, which wasn't a home game. So they get a real home game. As before we jump into it, we're going to quickly dive into the game. It was a preseason game, so it didn't really matter, and it was boring. And then we will look back at our preseason playoff predictions to see where we went wrong. And then maybe jump into a game or two from the other wild card matchups. But before we do that, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54 and follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts at Eagles Pinpool Network. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and rate the network. So it was 20-13. The Eagles' third and fourth stringers beat the Giants starters, and it felt like a preseason game because that's kind of the way it was played. I don't know if the Giants were trying to win the game. They won last week and went from first to fourth, and now they're picking third in the draft. But Tanner McKee looked good. I personally think Tanner McKee should be the backup quarterback. I think he's better than Kenny Pickett. He looks poised in the pocket. Now, again, going up against not a great defense, but some of the throws he made, he had a couple of bad throws, but like the anticipation on throws to Jahan Dotson, Jahan Dotson almost matched his season numbers in one game, which was pretty funny. He came in with like 12 catches for 120 yards. And I think he finished with 7-8 catches, close to 100 yards. So he kind of showed that if given the opportunity, he may potentially be able to produce. And it's going to be tough when you're behind A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert. You're going to be the fifth, sixth option in the offense. So you're not going to get the opportunities. But this game, he had the opportunities, and he kind of showed what he can do.
Yeah, I agree. And Jahan Dotson kind of spoke to it after the game. He's like, you basically, when you're stuck playing behind these guys, which it's not stuck so much as, it's kind of a privilege to play behind these guys. But when you're playing behind these guys, you're not going to see many opportunities. And it's true that he just wasn't seeing them. He fell out of grace in Washington. I still think he's an adequate, no wide receiver 3. He's a wide receiver 3 that needs some consistency in order to be good. And he just wasn't getting that consistency at the tail end of his career in Washington. He's not going to get it in Philadelphia. So how reliable can he truly be? I mean, we see when he becomes the focal point, put him as a wide receiver 2 on your team. Maybe he can be a really good wide receiver for you. But in this situation where you're going to be the fourth, the fifth option, up against, even when you pair him up against Jalen Hurts' legs, he probably even drops further down the list. It's unfortunate, but I mean, he showed he still got it. So it's just, unfortunately, he's not going to have it in this offense consistently. So Brett Eclipse, we felt the same way coming into the preseason. How Pickett ever won the backup job over McKee. We felt the same way coming out of the preseason. We felt, that Tanner McKee, that should have been Tanner McKee's job. But obviously, Kenny Pickett, with the draft capital was invested there. We knew that Howie was going to be invested in there because of what he invested in it. And he wanted to see some sort of return if it ever came to be. And of course, a rib injury maybe kind of, made it hard to see what he could be. But we know what he can be. He floats the ball out there. He lacks any creativity. Tanner McKee, the way Tanner McKee throws versus Kenny Pickett, he throws. I mean, he's a Mormon missile. He throws with authority. He's got a really good arm. Kenny Pickett does not, unfortunately. And it showed in Pittsburgh, and we knew it would show in Philadelphia too. He just kind of puts the ball up there, doesn't really put a lot of oomph behind it. And Tanner McKee does. I hope, if the rumor is true that, that Atlanta's probably going to keep Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold's going to stay in house, and JJ McCarthy, they don't want to trade JJ McCarthy. If the market is that dry for quarterbacks, there might be a market once again for Kenny Pickett to be traded.
There might be more of a market for Tanner McKee than Kenny Pickett, though.
Yeah, teams will want McKee. Teams will see more value in McKee, but obviously keep Tanner McKee because he's proven to be the reliable backup that you want. You probably won't get your return. Well, it depends how dry the market is. I mean, the draft class doesn't look great. Some teams are willing to keep these really highly priced players. Like Deshaun Watson can't go anywhere. Cousins might not go anywhere. JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold might be on the same roster again. It might be dry enough that you might get the same return back, but it'll be tough to say. That'll be an off-season discussion for sure. Offensively, it was nice to see Dallas Goedert out there. I mean, he played
more than I thought he was going to play, though.
Yeah, I think they really wanted to make sure that he was ready to go, because he's one of the guys that you would have had to worry the most about rust heading into the postseason, the wildcard weekend. So I'm kind of happy that he got the run that he did, but it does make you nervous when he takes some hits if, Dallas Goedert's going to get injured again. And our boy Will Shipley, I mean, the backup offensive line was sufficient. Obviously, they did their job, but obviously Will Shipley, if he actually got an opportunity to run behind the ones periodically, I think that he could be very good. He was a very reliable pass catcher. He was a great pass catcher. And, I mean, 3.2 yards per carry is nothing to scoff at behind your backups, your third stringers in some cases. So, I mean, I was pretty impressed with Will Shipley. I would go Will Shipley over Kenneth Gainwell, and Kenny Gainwell, you just say, here's our offer, take it or leave it in the offseason.
I think Shipley's going to be the backup. I think Shipley will be the backup running back next year, even if they bring Gainwell back. I think he's better.
I agree 100%. Like if you bring Gainwell back, it has to be, say, give him the veterans minimum, say this is all you're getting, and you're at third stringer. Make him be up front, just like kind of like Boston Scott, but don't use him as much as Boston Scott every time you brought him back. But I do think Will Shipley's better than Kenny Gainwell, and I think that if given the opportunity to play behind the number one offensive line, could look very good and would look much more adequate than Kenny Gainwell. San Diego 2019. I like seeing Dotson show what he can do, just in case one of the big guys have to miss a little bit of time. But we had a guy miss a bit of time. We had guys miss time, and Dotson did not step up in this same way. So
the offense also looked different under Tanner McKee. Like they ran a lot more play action.
Definitely.
Excuse me. And they moved him out of the pocket more than Jalen Hurts. Now, I don't know if that's because Jalen changes the play. Maybe it gets called and he changes the play. Who knows? But if that's not the case and they don't call it for Jalen, I would like to see it called for Jalen, get him moving outside the pocket, to be able to throw the ball to receivers, going towards the sideline or coming across the field or whatever it is. But it did look like the game, obviously it's going to change because the skill sets for Tanner McKee and Jalen Hurts are totally different. But I think some of the concepts that were used for Tanner McKee could also be used for Jalen Hurts.
Get well soon, LJ. Yeah, LJ's got like the endless cough going on.
Yeah, it's a stupid cough. It just won't go away. Everything else is fine. It's just this cough. Thank you. I appreciate it, San Diego.
Brett Eclipse says, I think it would be cool to see McKee become a starting QB elsewhere years in the future. I'd like to see him stay as a backup, but of course, we would love to see success for him as well.
Think about, so if you were to put McKee and Pickett in this upcoming draft with the QBs that are coming out, where would they be? Like McKee was a 6th round pick for the Eagles, so I don't think he would be a first rounder this year. But and Pickett was a first rounder for the Steelers. But thinking about Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, and some of the other quarterbacks that are coming out, it's probably tough. I'm throwing this out there now. Like there's no prep work, but would they be up in the top, or would Pickett, we'll say, would he be in the top 5 of the quarter, in this draft would he be in the top 5 of quarterbacks? Because if that's the case, maybe you can trade him and get some value. Probably not a first-round pick value, but get maybe a second-round pick, third-round pick value for Pickett if you were going to trade him and keep McKee as the backup.
Yeah, I mean, like, definitely agree with you. You're not going to get a first rounder, but like, I mean, I would say like the fact that they have the experience. Like, if you want to draft a Shador Sanders, like, I feel like a lot of this draft class needs time to develop, and we know that in the NFL, you don't get time to develop. You step in and you play right away, and you sink or you swim. And we've seen so many sink, and I feel like this is one of those draft classes where we may see a handful of these guys just sink. And like, you've heard some comments made that Shador Sanders in some NFL scouts' minds isn't even a first round pick. Like, I think the guy to have in this class is going to be Cam Ward, but obviously even he is a kind of a developmental piece. Like, I would love to take one of those guys and have McKee or Pickett as my starter and be able to develop this other guy for a year or two. The thing with McKee is you probably don't want to draft one of these guys and play McKee as a starter because his experience isn't as viable as a Pickett. At least a Kenny Pickett provides the viable experience that makes sense to say, you're the backup to Kenny Pickett for this year. You're going to learn and we're going to develop you. Whereas I don't necessarily believe a team might do that with Tanner McKee unless they really, really see him as start and eligible. But I would say like that would be my perspective on the whole matter. Is I don't think long-term they would be starters. They would be great guys to say, we're going to trade a third-round pick for Kenny Pickett, and then we're going to go and we're going to draft Shador Sanders, and Shador Sanders is going to develop for a year. That won't happen, but that would be the theory that I would run off of. And it kind of like for the Vikings, it almost kind of, well, J.J. McCarthy got hurt, but Sam Darnold got to step up, and now J.J. McCarthy might get to learn from Sam Darnold and stuff. Or is learning from Sam Darnold and learning the offense and developing in areas that he might not have gotten to develop if he was just thrown into it. So, you know,
also
maybe
have to think Justin Fields is going to be a free agent. So I think Russell Wilson also, and Pittsburgh might bring Wilson back. Who knows? So like Justin Fields could be a wild card somewhere. He could be a bridge quarterback to somebody. Kirk Cousins, if he were to leave Atlanta. Just trying to think quickly. Aaron Rodgers, if he leaves the Jets and decides not to retire, it could be a bridge for a year or two. Just trying to think of there's quarterbacks out there. If teams aren't too high on some of the quarterbacks that are coming out this year.
And then San Diego 2019, someone out there will still want Pickett in an offense more suited for him. He can be serviceable. Plus,
his offense is suited for him though. Pittsburgh's wasn't. I don't know if the Eagles is suited for him.
You really, really have to tailor an offense specifically to whatever.
I don't even know what his strengths are.
His game,
he doesn't have an arm. I have no idea what his strengths are.
It would have to be short, quick, hidden passes because he just doesn't have the arm strength. I don't know if he has the quick, the long decision making to go through a couple different reads and then make the appropriate decision. I feel like it has to be the most simplified, dumbed down offense that you can make that's going to be quick hitters and rely on a lot of yak, like maybe a San Francisco or maybe the Miami offense might be somewhat serviceable for him because they rely so much on yards after the catch and the weaponry around them. But how many teams beyond that, outside of the Shanahan trio, really creating offenses like that or have the need for a quarterback and the offensive weaponry like that in free agency? I don't know if there's going to be much there, but I do agree. I think there will be a market for Kenny Pickett because the market overall from a draft perspective and a free agent perspective isn't overly appealing this offseason.
Nope. Let's see. So the offense was okay. The offensive line actually did pretty well early on against Bryant, Johnson and was it Kennard that was playing right tackle?
Yes.
They did pretty well against Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Birds. Thibodeau did get a sack eventually in the game, but they deserve credit. The Eagles didn't really run the ball often. They threw the ball a lot with McKee. He didn't turn the ball over. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Jordan Davis played a lot. And as it was mentioned, who mentioned it?
Jordan Davis looked good without getting carried by the rest of the line.
Yep. And Bryce Huff did suck, so Bryce Huff's not going to see playing time in the playoffs. He shouldn't, and it wouldn't shock me if he gets moved or whatever in the offseason, because that was a bad miss by Howie Roseman. And as good of an offseason that Howie's had, look, he had a miss there. And Jahan Dotson, I think it's a miss, but it might be too early to tell. Who knows? Because they still have him for another year, I think, on his rookie contract. But yeah, that Bryce Huff deal was really bad. And who would have thought that the Jets got the worst? Now, it wasn't a trade, but it's almost like a trade. The Jets got a worst of it with Hassan Reddick, who finished with 0 sacks this year, I think. And I know he only played 6-7 games, I think it was, but he finished with no sacks, which is kind of crazy for a guy that came into the year with 4 consecutive double-digit sack seasons. Sidney Brown had an interception, also had a couple missed tackles, trying to blow people up. Trying to be a heat-seeking missile. Oren Burks, I think, had 17.
We've said about him.
Oren Burks had 17 tackles. He had who would have thought the Eagles have linebackers right now? Now again, it was the Giants, and I wouldn't want Oren Burks starting, but he was out there and making plays. So
Oren Burks started the week prior and looked plenty serviceable besides Zach Bond. Not that we want Oren Burks, not that we can't get the deal done with Zach Bond. Let's try this thing with Oren Burks. That's not what I'm saying.
No, he's here to be the special teams guy. I
Definitely.
would want him on the field for a majority of the time. Trying to think. Trot looked okay. Keely Ringo, Isaiah Rodgers.
Keely Ringo had that amazing punt from Braden Mann, and then that tackle.
He should have made the Pro Bowl team as the special teams guy. Like, he is really good. That's his niche on this team right now, and he did an outstanding job. Or he does an outstanding job on being the gunner for the punt team.
An elite gunner for sure. Brett Eclipse linebacker factory. Man, I don't know. I feel like it has to do with the defense. It just feels like just a Vic Fangio defense will help spotlight one linebacker, and that one linebacker this year, and hopefully for years to come, was Zach Bond. So we'll see what happens there. Agree with you on Sidney Brown. That was one of the big things that we had against Sidney Brown. One of the big things we have against Reed Blankenship. They have no technique when it comes to tackling, and they kind of need to work on getting that technique, because I get it. We as fans love the highlight reels. I would rather see a beautiful Cooper DeJean on Derrick Henry-esque tackle 100 times out of 100. I don't need to see some guy get blown up by this heat-seeking missile type hit. I just want to see a good, fundamentally sound tackle that ends in lost yardage or a good stop or something like that.
Trying to replicate the Sheldon Brown on Reggie Bush hit from a while back.
Yeah, well, exactly. And yeah, Jordan Davis, good game. Oren Burks and Jeremiah Trotter, I mean, they had 5 missed tackles combined, according to PFF. So, I mean, obviously, but that's to be expected when they're not seeing the field a whole lot. Hopefully, Jeremiah Trotter gets some more opportunities down the road, because we did draft him the way we drafted him, and who knows what might happen there. I mean, otherwise, there's not a whole lot to say about the defense. The defense did their job against a really bad New York Giants offense, a really bad New York Giants team. Like, they have so little to work with, and you're bringing back the same guys that for 3 years have given you so little to work with, but a lot of bad decisions, like the Daniel Jones contract, the Saquon Barkley fiasco, like all the money they threw at, all of the investment they put into Brian Burns, but nowhere else on the defense. They let their best offensive and defensive player walk this last offseason. Like, the decision-making, like, to me, at a minimum, if you want to bring Dayball back because you want to see what he can do with someone that's, not Daniel Jones for a full season, okay, but Joe Scone was the one who made some really bad decisions that put Brian Dayball in the situation to look as inadequate as he is, or his whole coaching staff look as inadequate as they are. So, I mean, it's that I get it. It was week 18. The Giants kind of looked like they were done, like they had really given up on the season. But man, like, still to lose to the backups is pretty sad. But and we forgot to mention You called an Anaya Smith touchdown, and I called an EJ Jenkins touchdown when we at the end of the last episode when you said, "Who do you think will get a touchdown?" or "Who are you watching?" We each said one of those. We each said them, and they both got one. So that was nice.
And then special teams wise, Elliott missed another field goal, and he might be the big question mark going into the playoffs, which didn't think that would happen.
Do you trust him? Like, if you're in a big time spot, like there's no way you go all the way to the Super Bowl as the Eagles and there's not a spot where you need Elliott to be prime last year, Jake Elliott. Do you
don't trust
him? Like,
nope.
That's wild.
And San Diego says one thing that I would tell the Eagles coaches, please hide Braden Mann's helmet right before the kickoff team hits the field. It's true. I don't know what happened, but let Elliott do kickoffs. Just stop with the Braden Mann experiment. Like, it shouldn't happen in the playoffs. Maybe because Elliott, he did it in the Dallas game, I think, and did it for a couple times in this past game, but maybe not doing kickoffs has affected his leg power, because when you're doing kickoffs, you have to kick it far, and you're in that motion, and you kind of get used to the power that you have to put behind it. You're not doing kickoffs, it's not the same.
I think it's an underrated point of discussion that has been brought up, but isn't really discussed enough. Like, just give it to Jake Elliott. Let Jake Elliott do the job. It should be his job. It should be a kicker's job. If you're preserving the leg, well, then I think you have a whole other point of discussion to have than if you're trying to preserve Jake Elliott's leg, because it looks like Jake Elliott needs the practice. Red Eclipse says Elliott has never missed in the playoffs, I believe. Let's just hope that continues.
Let's hope we don't need a big kick. I forget who's the kicker for Green Bay. Is it McManus? I don't know. But yeah, and if it is McManus, he went to Temple, so he's kicked at the link before. Excuse me. But yeah. So special teams should be interesting. All right. So that's the game. By the way, in our season selections, I went 11-6 on Eagles games. You went 8-9. By the way, just so you picked the Giants to win this past week. By the way,
I know. I thought that they might give it one hurrah, but they really did not. They look like such a just depleted team.
Well, they look like they were tanking. And
Red Eclipse did bring up, speaking of play calling, the Saints made a request to interview Kellen Moore. He says, I'm just hoping Moore doesn't pull a Jonathan Gannon and forget about his job here.
I don't think he would, but it also makes it a tad bit easier is, and I know we don't want him to call plays, but Sirianni is an offensive coach. So if that were to happen, but I don't think Kellen Moore is going to get hired anywhere. And then obviously that's the goal of coaches. You want to get hired. And the good thing is that Vic Fangio is not trying to get a head coaching job. So he's not going to go anywhere, and the defense will have continuity. So we'll see what happens. Because there are right now, you have the Jaguars, Jets, Saints, Patriots, who I think is going to be Vrabel.
Yeah, they haven't done a very good job of hiding the fact that they're just going to go through the process and give that job to Vrabel.
The Raiders could potentially become open, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
And there's so many people that are so highly coveted outside of coaches. Like, you got internal candidate wise from like a NFL standpoint, like Ben Johnson's a hot commodity. But then, like, outside is where everyone's coming. Like, the Jets seem like really into Rex Ryan again for whatever ungodly reason I'm not going to understand.
Rex Ryan is terrible. He averaged 10 losses his last 4 years. But so the open jobs right now are going through this quickly. The Saints, the Raiders is not open yet. The Jets, the Patriots, the Jaguars. Am I missing somebody?
No, you got it all.
It's only 5?
That's the AFC.
And there's one in the NFC?
The Saints, yeah. That's it for now. It's just
a lot. Dallas could potentially become open. McCarthy doesn't have a contract, and they have exclusive rights to him through January 14th. And the Bears. I'm sorry, the Bears.
Bears, yeah.
The Bears also want to interview McCarthy, and they asked for permission. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. Excuse me, but I don't know if Kellen Moore.
It's that McCarthy had the Cowboys have exclusive rights to interview with him till the 15th of January. So I feel like that's why they haven't agreed to allow the interview to go through, is they're really pressing to get that shored up, which is crazy to me. But I mean,
bad organizations and then there's a lot of bad things, and that's why they continue to suck.
And there's a lot of teams that just don't want to turn over. Like the Colts and the Giants are quite adamant that they want to give things a go, and they don't want to just be that team that's hiring a coach every year again, despite the situation. But I mean, like the Colts and the Giants both have, like, they're not the one-hit wonders. Like these coaches have been around for 3 years each. Like that's generally the window where you want to see at least some improvement. And both the Colts and the Giants, I'm pretty sure, have went backwards in everything, except the Colts got a franchise quarterback, but the franchise quarterback is extremely questionable in his work ethic and like what is he going to be for this Indianapolis Colts team. And then the Miami Dolphins stuck it out with Mike McDaniel. They're probably going on the whim that Tua's injuries were the reason that this season didn't finish as they wanted to. Although then you see Tyreek Hill wants out. And then you see the post that Jalen Ramsey put up and then took down, presumably maybe wanted out. And you're like, okay, things might get interesting. And then there's a rumor for the Jags job that because Trent Baalke's there, no respectable coach wants to go.
He still has his job.
I just can't believe, like, that to me is wild. But like basically they're saying that they don't want to go there. Like no respectable coaching candidate wants to go there because Trent Baalke's there. So that's you're probably going to end up with a potential CEO type coach or under the radar coach that's just not ready to be a coach yet. We'll see.
In the event Kellen leaves for a head coaching job, who do you think Philly brings up to replace him next year? That's a great question.
I don't think there's anybody in house, so it definitely would be an external candidate.
It's a shame.
I haven't thought about it.
I haven't either. Like. Not Doug Peterson. That'd be funny. Frank Reich? No.
Like I don't think I'd bring back someone who previously was here. Like I'd have to take the time to actually look at like hot, offensive coordinator candidates because I hadn't considered. And it's not that I don't think Kellen Moore deserves a job. I just think that Kellen Moore has gone through this cycle so many times now without coming out really even a finalist in a head coaching interview or position, that I'm not really worried about Kellen Moore going because of this year. And we don't have to worry about Vic Fangio. So I haven't really even thought about it. But something to we'll bring it up. We'll talk about on a future episode, Reddit Clips, an off-season episode. Join us. We'll come with candidate names.
All right. So before the season started, we did our NFL predictions for each division and for the playoffs. We will quickly run through them. So I have mine in the AFC. I had 4 of 7 correct. So my prediction was Chiefs, Ravens, Dolphins, Texans, Bengals, Bills, Colts. So I got Chiefs, Ravens, Texans, and Bills right. And the Chiefs I actually had in the 1 seed. So, and then I had the Dolphins for some reason winning the AFC East. That was stupid by me. And then I had the Ravens winning the AFC North. Let's see what my biggest. I had the Chargers at 9-8. They ended up making I had the Broncos at 5-12. So they obviously did better. I had the Steelers at 9-8. Patriots 5. I had the Jets at 7-10. They did worse. Dolphins at 12-5. They did worse. I had the Jaguars at 9-8, and they did worse. So what's your AFC? What did your AFC look like?
I don't have my full like I didn't have a full prediction of everyone. I just did division winners and wild cards. So I'll give you mine. I had Buffalo winning the AFC East, Baltimore taking the North, the South going to Houston, and the West going to Kansas City. So hit on all of those. But then the wild card is where things got funky because I had Cincinnati, who almost made it. The Jets, which was your Miami is a laughing stock. Mine was the Jets, and you laughed at me when I said that on the preview episode. And then I had the Indianapolis Colts. So funny for me. The AFC was I got the division winners right. I didn't go fancy with any of those, but the wild card was dicey.
So over, excuse me, over in NFC, I did have the Eagles winning the division. I had them 13-4. They went 14-3. So my before I get to the divisions, my playoff picture looked like Eagles, Lions, Niners, Bucks, Packers, Rams, Cowboys. So I got the Eagles, Lions, Bucks, Packers, and Rams right. So I got 5 out of 7. The Niners and the Cowboys obviously did not make it. I had the Commanders going 6-11. They went 12-5. I had the Lions 13-4. They went 15-2. I had the Vikings 4-13. Flip that around. They went 14-3. I had the Niners going 13-4. That obviously didn't happen. Bucks 9-8, kind of close enough. But yeah, so 5 out of 7 in the NFC with the Eagles as the 1 seed. They finished the 2 seed. I had the Lions as the 2 seed. They finished the 1 seed. Close enough.
I had Philadelphia, Detroit, which was good. And then I went wrong in Atlanta. I took Atlanta. I thought Kirk Cousins was going to give them at least 1 year, but not even. And then I had San Francisco. To no one's prediction could they ever assume that San Francisco would get as banged up on key players as they did. Then I had wildcard Green Bay, Dallas, and the Rams. So I went 4 for 7 and 4 for 7 in that, because Dallas got banged up and ended up doing terrible as well, which was not something I had on my bingo card. So there was a few things that went awry for my winner.
And then in my divisional matchup, I had the Eagles Packers, so that's happening wild card weekend. My conference championships, Ravens, Chiefs, Eagles, Lions could still happen. And then I had Eagles over Ravens in the Super Bowl. So I'm still looking good in that for now. We'll see what happens.
Brett Eclipses Atlanta definitely could have made the playoffs if they had the guts to start Penix sooner. I mean, I tend to kind of agree with that. I just think like Penix he looked serviceable, but that was with throwing like 2 games. He was just kind of throwing in cold turkey. The offense wasn't really built around a Michael Penix offense and what he's capable of doing. It was more built around the offense that was already in place. So I actually tend to agree with you. I actually think Penix may look like the right pick for how heavily scrutinized the pick was. I guess there's only time's going to tell on that, but Penix looked better in those 2 starts than Cousins did in like the 5 prior starts. So, and funny fact about this comment, I'm not willing to go in-house personally. Brett Eclipse talking about the Eagles offensive coordinator job if Kellen leaves, especially not after Press Taylor and Brian Johnson failures. Press Taylor will be available again.
Yeah,
we know that's not
I can't believe Doug Peterson has lost 2 jobs because of Press Taylor.
Yeah, definitely. Like Trevor Lawrence may not have been the pick that we all thought, but Press Taylor certainly did not help. And I think that somebody can come in there and get way more of Trevor Lawrence. Well, someone has to come in there and get it out of him because Trevor Lawrence got paid. But I think someone can come in and get a lot more out of Trevor Lawrence than obviously Press Taylor. Press Taylor is a failure on the offensive side of the ball. He doesn't deserve another job that sniffs offensive coordinator. And Doug Peterson, I don't know. Do you think Doug Peterson lands another job?
No, not a head coaching job.
No, he's too stuck to his people, and I think that he had his loyalty. He's loyal to a fault, and this has been his fault. He lost the job in Philly, and he's lost a job in Jacksonville. So
I just think the only one that I feel confident is Vrabel going to the Patriots.
Oh yeah, that one for sure. That's
Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson does take a job this offseason. I just don't know where.
There's some hot jobs. Like you have the chance to work with Caleb Williams.
If Bulky wasn't staying in Jacksonville, that would be a good job.
That would be a nice job. Exactly. Like if it wasn't for Bulky, but like, and then it depends what Ben Johnson wants, because apparently Ben Johnson's kind of like looking for the Bill Belichick minus the namesake, aspect. He's kind of looking for a bit of control over a few more things than he should. So I personally think it would be extremely interesting to see Ben Johnson out of Detroit, maybe in an outdoor situation, because you've had the luxury of playing indoors for so many of your games for so many years. Like it would be nice to see him. Like New England's a pretty attractive job because they got $130 million. They got Drake May, And then you got
He
Chicago.
also
They got
coached
Caleb
at Boston
Williams.
College, if I'm not mistaken. So he knows the area.
Mm-hmm.
The Bears with Caleb Williams. I don't think Caleb Williams is going to be any good, but that's just me. I still think the Raiders' job might potentially come open, especially if Tom Brady has as much say as people think he's going to have. So we'll see. We'll see what
The
happens.
players just love Pierce, and I think that they're so afraid that if they pull the plug on Pierce, that they would lose a significant chunk of the locker room. Like you're playing with like a guy like Max Crosby. If you pull the plug on Antonio Pierce, would he say, "Okay, I'm out, trade me"? Like would he do that? Like, interesting scenario. We'll see.
Max Crosby can get traded to the Eagles.
But just like Myles Garrett, I don't think the Cleveland Browns are going to give you a plan worth liking. But let me tell you about Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right. We'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. So let's go into our unheralded player of the week for the final week in the in the NFL. Who is your unheralded player, Connor?
I'm gonna go with Tanner McKee this week. I have not used a Philadelphia Eagle yet this year, and I know that you used him the week prior, coming in throwing 4 passes. But I'm using him this week because we actually got a full game of experience, and here we are talking about, does he deserve to be a starter? Earlier in the show, we were talking about, does the guy deserve an opportunity to play over some of these first round potential quarterback prospects? Like that's to the level that Tanner McKee, the Mormon missile, has reached in Philadelphia. I know that name is wild. I can't wait to see some of the t-shirts people make for a Mormon missile. But yeah, so I'm going with Tanner McKee on this one. It was, the Giants suck. Let's face it. But that was a good game. You had your backups all across the board, minus Dallas Goedert for a bit of the game, offensively, and you were able to do what you were able to do in just kind of short order. Like the guy literally went from your emergency quarterback every week to like a backup quarterback, then into the starting quarterback role. So he's been thrust into some different roles this year very quickly, and I was very impressed with Tanner McKee. He deserves the backup job. Get something for Kenny Pickett and send him away.
Yep, I agree. McKee should be the backup. It won't happen in the playoffs, but I think next year it could happen. I'm going with Marvin Mims. He had 5 catches, 51 yards, 2 touchdowns to help the Denver Broncos snap a 9-year playoff drought. I think it's 9 years.
I think you're correct.
In their 38-0 victory over Kansas City, because Kansas City decided to play nobody with Carson Wentz, like nobody. I think a lot of that had to do is they wanted to keep the Bengals out the playoffs, because if there's 2 guys, because I think Allen can, if there's one guy that has zero issue about going into Kansas City to winning a playoff game, his name is Joe Burrow, and he potentially might have had the opportunity. He would, if the Bengals would have made the playoffs, it would have been Josh Allen versus Burrow, and then if Burrow won that, it would have been Patrick Mahomes versus Burrow. And talk about a run that would have been for the Cincinnati Bengals. But Bengals got to start. Bengals have to realize that the season starts in September and not in November. Maybe win some games early on. But yes, so I'm going to go.
Eclipse says, should we talk about Carson Wentz? We can definitely say it's over for him. When you're throwing to the night, tell me, who knows Nico Remigio? Yeah, if you know him, he was the leading receiver for Carson Wentz this
Carson
week.
Steele was the running back. Like that was I don't judge Carson on this past game. He was like 10 of 17. Like
he's someone who will be interesting to watch. Speaking of the quarterback, I know that some people feel this game definitely washed him because he went 10 for 17 for 98 yards, 4 sacks. It was a pretty ugly overall game, but you literally had the Kansas City offensive line is not known for being all that great in the first place, and then you fling in the backups and give Carson Wentz this situation. It'll be interesting because there's some people who are like Carson Wentz could be the Sam Darnold next year that Sam Darnold was this year. But I think Carson Wentz is done as well. Red Eclipse, I really think he's done. I don't think it took this game for me to realize he was done. I'm just saying they didn't do him any justice for any sort of value in the offseason, minus the fact that the market for quarterbacks is slim pickings.
Tech asks, if Hurts starts off slow, would you bench him for McKee? Now, we're going to talk about this later this week when we do our wild card matchup preview. But
I
no,
think Tech
and
is
I'm going to put this in
trolling.
your mind
Tech
now.
is
The Eagles are going to start slow on Sunday. Get it in your mind now so that you're not freaking out. They're going to start slow. I'm telling you
LJ,
now.
you're freaking out, man. Tech is trolling. He is trying to troll a quarterback controversy.
I know.
Come on, Tech,
I'm
with
just
the
saying,
quarterback
I'm letting other
factory.
people know that they're going to start slow on Sunday. It's going to happen. They're not going to come out and put up 21 points in the first quarter. It won't happen. They're going to start slow.
Agreed.
The good thing for them is the Packers are beat up. So maybe they won't start.
Christian Watson tore his
Watson's
ACL.
out. Love is going to play, but they do have Josh Jacobs. So if the Eagles can stop Jacobs, they'll be fine. And, hopefully the Eagles won't be slipping and sliding on the field like they were in Brazil. And was it Jaden Reed who had the long touchdown reception? But just to let you know, they're going to start slow on Sunday. Wrap your mind around it now, and we'll talk about it more on Friday, I guess is when we're going to be back.
Absolutely. I mean, it is. And just for everyone, I am putting so much money on Jalen Hurts will be a limited participant and out of concussion protocol tomorrow at practice.
Well, not tomorrow. They don't practice tomorrow.
Wednesday. Generally, it starts on a Tuesday. They'll do like the walkthrough sometimes or at practice. But Wednesday, I would put any money on the minute that they step on that field, he will be there and he will be playing.
If he's not, that's when we worry. If he's not practicing,
I'm not even worried about it.
I'm just saying, I'm not worried about it either. But if he's not practicing in any capacity on Wednesday, then we're going to be starting a different quarterback, which has me a little worried. But he was apparently at the walkthrough on Saturday, so yeah.
Tech. Did you guys see how many different wide receivers had targets yesterday? Don't tell me that Tanner McKee, if he had the chance to have Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, rewind to the week before for his 4 passes. Where did all 4 of those passes go? Don't tell me that AJ Brown and Devontae Smith would not be the recipients of a large number of Tanner McKee's targets if he was a starter.
They should be.
Absolutely, 100%.
All right. Well, the Eagles finished 14-3, the number 2 seed in the NFC. And the Lions are the number 1 seed, 15-2. Their first time they've had the number 1 seed, I think, ever, maybe, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
So yeah, we'll hopefully we have an Eagles-Lions matchup, or hopefully a team can upset the Lions, and the Eagles can host the NFC Championship game in 3 weeks. Yeah, it'd be 3 weeks, something like that.
I'd be all for that.
Thank you all for tuning into the Kelly Green Hour. We'll be back Friday for the Eagles-Packers preview matchup, and we will have our predictions, our players to watch, our keys to the game, and we'll get you set for the game. And we will probably do predictions for the other 5 matchups in the Super Wildcard Weekend. Brett Eclipse says Tanner McKee about to go on a Nick Foles Super Bowl run. Let's not put that out in the atmosphere. Is this the best Eagles team ever? Well, let's talk about that in February. Let's win a Super Bowl, and then we can discuss that. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHurrell54. And follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts at Eagles Pinpool Network. For Connor, I'm LJ. We'll see you this Friday for the Eagles-Packers wildcard matchup.